A little bit about myself. I am a student of life. If you really want to know about that, you could check out my LinkedIn profile. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and to have this conversation.
Hi, my name is Pastor David Ewagata. As you've heard, I'm a pastor, married to one wife, lead a ministry called YHub Networks, and love working with young people. I guess that's why I'm here. Hi, you had to start from there. Let me start by saying one of the things that we need to understand as Christians is that there's really no distinction between sexual messes and LGBTQ issues. It's a sin like any other. It's a failure, a moral failure like any other. And as long as we look at it as an isolated thing, then it turns into what I would call the sacred cow. It's like you can touch the person who is sleeping around heterosexually and condemn them and tell them you're not going to, or you're going to be suspended from school. But then you don't touch this one, because I'm just trying to figure out, if you found two couples, a gay and a straight couple, messing up in a school, do you suspend the gay as well, or do you leave them because that's a chosen lifestyle?
Yeah, I think for me, this is also a topic I try and learn more about and grow my knowledge in, because it's something that's very out there in our society today. And I think when it comes to the question of like whether, I think some people and most Christians are usually torn between whether it's right or wrong. And I think where I question it is like the form of love that they are showing towards the people they have chosen to have this relationship with. Would this be considered wrong in God's eyes? Because God does tell us to love one another and not to judge each other. And I think it's very difficult for me to try and separate that to people choosing to love the people that they've chosen to love in terms of being in heterosexual relationships and the non-gender conforming relationships. So I don't know. It's a very interesting topic. A lot of people say that the Bible thinks it's wrong, and a lot of verses that quote it with like the Sodom and Gomorrah story. And I think for me, it always comes down to why are we choosing to treat them differently due to the people they have chosen to have these relationships with. And it's not really set on stone that like this is wrong, right? So where would you draw the line here?
Wow. I think the line is drawn very clearly. If you go to a school, they have what they call the rules and regulations.
Right.
There's what you do, what you don't do. I remember I went to a college where you were told if you cross the threshold of a door into a girl's room, because we were all in the same block, if you cross for whatever reason, even if she's fainted, you find a hook and pull her out, but you're not entering that room.
Yeah.
If you cross that line, you're suspended. Actually, it was expulsion. It was just the rule as it was set.
Wow.
Now, there are so many variables to why you would cross that threshold. I remember when we finished after graduation, we finally crossed that line. We were like, dude, we've been waiting for all this. I don't want to do anything. It was just to say, I walked into a girl's room.
And you've broken that rule.
And we broke the rule when we knew our tickets were ready to go back home.
Yeah.
And so whether we thought it was sensible or not, whether we thought it was right or not, did not count. It's the rule. All right. We can argue about the semantics. We can argue about, is it because the person is unwell? Is it because I like this person? Is it because there's a fire and this is the exit?
Yeah.
We could argue about that. But at the end of the day, it comes back to one thing. A rule has been put. For the Christian, the Bible is given as a rule book. And so when something is mentioned and said, this is wrong, lying is wrong. We can argue about, am I lying because the cops are onto my friend and, we want to save his life? Or am I lying because, I just don't want to be caught up in something I've done?
Right.
So coming back to that question of when is a lie a lie? When is an infraction an infraction? And who writes that rule? Once the rule has been written and we've come and said, okay, fine, we subscribe to this rule. Then we come back and say, okay, this is the rule. Let's adhere to it. All right? Regardless of what I feel about it, regardless of what you feel about it. And so that's why I'm saying it's when we take away the LGBTQ conversation and say this is an isolated case. It's separate from the liar, from the thief, from the heterosexual offender, from the guy who just watches porn, binge watching, the guy who just, nyongas, and we put them in different categories. We totally throw them off. Mm-hmm. Because now it feels like I need to say sorry for watching porn, but you don't need to say sorry for being gay.
Mm. Right.
So Missy Jui, maybe.
I feel like so I agree with what you said in terms of like if it's a rule, like whether you have stolen a pencil or you've stolen somebody's car, like you've still stolen at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. But I think for me, my biggest question would be like, with people who identify in this community, is there no space for them in like a church environment? Is there like no way they can even identify as Christians? Because I don't know how to put it, if it's like in a completely different entity, because as well, there's so many young people who have grown up in Christian homes, who have grown up in like, and their parents have like very strong Christian backgrounds and have grown up in these values. But then when they grow up, they just realize like what society has defined as like a male and female or like a woman and a man just doesn't identify with me. And I mean, it doesn't make like what them as a person are not like bad people. Like they don't completely switch up, but it's just a matter of who they feel like are, I guess, attracted to, and who they are is not what society defines as a right thing. Because I mean, from birth, we are born as a boy or a girl. You're either XY or XX. And I think the conversation now becomes when you get to that point, and it doesn't mean that like the values that you have grown up with, especially if you're growing up in a Christian family, they haven't changed, but then what you're seeing and how you feel towards certain people is very different from what society is. And I feel like for that specific individual, would they have a space to still express themselves in a Christian community?
I'll come back to the question, what makes a Christian a Christian?
Wow. For me, I think it's somebody who believes in God and believes in mostly the teachings and what the Bible says, and stands with the word and goes, actively goes out to tell people about what God has done and like the and spreading the word. I think there's still more to it, but I feel in summary that's what I would define it as.
And what would characterize then a person who is a Christian from the one who is not a Christian?
I believe it's somebody who doesn't believe in what Christians believe are, or like the written things in the Bible, or just completely believe in a different supreme being, or but not to say that like other religions are not what do you call it?
I'm not shikad.
Yeah, I'm not shikad. But it's just to say like you're not a Christian if you don't believe in the words of Christ. The Bible and the words of Christ.
Awesome. Because I think what characterizes a Christian is that they are Christ-like.
Yes.
What characterizes a Hindu, I almost say that they are coward, but no. Okay, let me come back. Let's come back. Okay.
Cancel culture is real.
But it's that they ascribe to the Vedas and what it says.
Yes.
What characters are Muslim is that they subscribe to the Quran.
Yes.
All right? And so when you look at what the Quran says and you look at somebody who says they are Muslims, there has to be a congruence. All right? Be it in terms of they pray 5 times a day, you know, they give the alms to the poor, they, you know, right now they're in the month of Ramadan, they are fasting.
Yeah.
So those are the things that characterize a Muslim. If a person says I'm a Muslim and I'm not fasting at this time, then you say, are you sick? Is there a problem? All right. Same thing with a Christian. There are certain virtues. And that's why the Christians were, the believers were first called Christians because they exhibited Christ-like character. I think the biggest mark of a believer is not just so much, you know, that they can speak in tongues, they can pray for hours, you know, they attend services, you know, they are faithful in giving. I think the ultimate marker for a Christian is the change of character. And I think I speak for myself and for many when I say one of the distinctives of when I gave my life to Christ is that some things changed. Right. I don't know if that's true or false. I'm a
No. I definitely
you're just
agree.
In the same tangent.
Yes.
Because me, as David Ewagata, without the change that came in Christ, I would not be here. Because I was heading in that trajectory. When I joined high school, I told myself, Nairobi will know David Ewagata. I was going to chafua. Yeah, you know, guys think pastors are body now in the monastery, you know.
Yeah.
They sing songs like Nasadike. No, I was going to Chafua.
Right.
And I grew up in Eastlands.
Yeah.
You know, I already knew what party is all about, what crime is all about, what, you know, all the dramas, name it. You know, my friends sold weed, you know, my best friend's mom sold changa. Not leave these cheap things that they are bottled. No. This one you get it from a drum. You know, you gonga like this. You gonga like this, first of all, the light turns to darkness for a bit. So I knew I could go that direction.
Right.
Until I met Christ.
Right.
And so that changed the direction of my life. I remember friends of mine who told me, Maze, one of the girls I was a good friend of told me, 2 weeks, you'll be back kwa ground. The way I know you, there is no Jesus here. You know. And for years I kept telling her, you know, I'm still holding on. I'm still holding on. What did that holding on entail? A change of character, change of behavior. You know, where I would have been pitying with girls, now I'm like, oh, sister, I encourage you in the Lord. Who does that? Which 16-year-old encourages a girl in the Lord? So, what I'm saying is, something had to change. And this is where the struggle is, I think, for many of us with this LGBTQ conversation. And they are captured in the words that Jesus tells this woman who was caught. She was not even at OSG, there was a story, OSG, there was a rumor. She was shikwad in the act. I think the Jama looked at the fence and mocked like this. All right? But the woman was caught. So whoever caught them was 100% sure. You know, they brought her in front of Jesus, you know, and they say this woman was caught in the act. Right? The Bible or the laws of Moses say we should stone her to death. And this is where the story is interesting. That many times we read the story up to where it says, Jesus stand, you know, bent on the ground and said, you know, whoever has no sin, let them be the first one to cast the stone. Legitimate. And so the non-condemnation clause is very clear in the words of Jesus, right? Kama hujafanya makosa, take a stone and throw. And the Bible records very clearly that they began living, starting from the oldest. Yeah, that guy has experience. Yeah, you know, that old guy and the mistakes, the collection of mistakes they have. Yeah, they were just like, dude, let me live fast. Going down to the younger, innocent ones who, you know, they just ate sugar.
Or stole a bread.
Yeah, or just a slice of bread. So they all left. And Jesus looks up and says, where are your accusers? Have they all left? She says, there's none left. And then he tells her, go.
Your sins are forgiven.
No.
Oh.
She says, go and sin no more. Or live your life of sin. Now, it's interesting. When I was reading it, it's very easy to confuse the two lives. There's live your life of sin. Live, L-I-V. LIVE, live your life of sin, endelea na maisha yako ya dhambi. And go and live, LEAVE,
right.
your life of sin. He was referring to the second one.
Right.
I think the problem we have with the LGBTQ conversations that it goes with the first one. Go and live your life of sin. That no one condemns you, but then sasa, just continue because it's an unjudgmental clause.
Right.
Nobody has condemned you. Everyone is a sinner like you. Go and continue their life of sin. And that is where the rubber meets the road. Because if I have to change to be Christ-like, then why shouldn't this person who has this tendency not change? And again, I bring it back to us. Don't you struggle with things as a person?
I do.
All right? So does it illegitimize your struggle? And so I have to tell you, this Jama who is katiaing you, tell him to leave you alone or marry you. And they're like, but he's really cool. We get a bit mushy, and this self-control thing is overrated. Why should we wait until we are married? Yeah, show me Bible verse. Exegete for me. Tell me exactly where in the Bible. Sometimes when your emotions are up here, you're like, dude, even this Jesus was joking, bana. Me the way I'm feeling right now, Jesus can take the wheel and kwenda with it.
Yeah.
Me, I'm doing what I want to do. So, this is the reality. The homosexual or the person with, that struggle is struggling the same way the heterosexual is struggling. Both our struggles are legit. Oh, you'll say, but now you'll get married, and then after you get married, you can consummate. But the reality is, even after you get married, one of the key statements in a marriage vow, forsaking all others. Because even after you get married, if it's like this, an employee comes into the office, you're like, why? I've not seen a chick like this one. Now I have to still control myself and say, no, what's when she likes you? And they're like, hey, this is heterosexual. If it was homosexual, maybe I could hide behind rights. But so we have struggles.
We do.
Whether single or married. Whether homosexual or heterosexual. The qualifier is this the life that Jesus wants us to live? Or is this the life that we choose to live? Go and live your life of sin, or go and live aside your life of sin.
Right. And I think I definitely agree with what she said. And for me, especially the part where we have chosen, or society has made the homosexual live, LIVE, this life of sin. And I think the question, or the conversation now is not a lot of people also understand this perspective. And I think you've really given a good insight about it. With the younger generation growing up in a society where it's even more of a trend, and day in, day out, the community grows, and there are more rights being fought for these people to be included in society, to be really be accepted. Exactly. And for the younger generation growing up hearing this from every single social media platform, and I mean even in sports right now, for the football league and the Premier League, you've seen the bans and everything, and everyone is trying to be more inclusive. And for society that's progressing that way, where do you think, or as Christians, what do you think we can do to prevent this LIV of sin and switch to the LEAVE of sin?
It's called branding. And let me tell you, there's somebody who said the Black Lives Movement was sitting down with the LGBTQ guys and saying, guys, how did you make progress so fast? We've been fighting this thing. Have you seen that thing going around? Guys, we've been fighting for 200 years because of something we can't change. Our skin color. All right?
Right.
And you guys have come, in 30 years, you've talked from the back burners to, government policy. We're going to give you aid if you accept this. And I tell people the sexual agenda, the sexual agenda has moved from the political agenda has moved from the boardroom to the bedroom.
Wow.
Right now, we're not told it's matters of integrity, it's matters of expenses, how you account for the monies you've been given that will determine whether you get aid. It's matters of whether you open the back door or not. See,
Right.
did that come out a bit loud? All right.
Yes, yeah.
And it's a conversation going on. Uganda is right now in the red with the US because the policy they have put across.
Right.
Why? Because suddenly government policy has moved from the boardroom
to the bedroom. And this did not just happen overnight. It has been a push that has taken years to craft. And brilliant minds have sat down and crafted it. And let me tell you, the genius of how this agenda has been pushed is a greater worry for me than the reality of young people going either accepting or, justifying the whole conversation around LGBTQ. Because I can tell you, years ago when I was in high school, we had gay guys. And I will tell you there's something very interesting about them as well. All of those guys who are caught and are suspended for gay behavior were, in their holiday time, sexually active, heterosexually. In Swahili they say, Simba akikosa nyama, hula nyasi. When a lion does not have meat,
catch meat or have meat, they'll eat grass. So they had been eating meat, but now they're in a boys' school, boarding. What is there? Grass. But diet must continue. For those guys who are not sexually active, this was in Form 2. For the guys who are not sexually active, the pressure did not arise, because one of the things about the human body is that we operate in habit, in routine. And that's why the person who wakes up early every day. My son is my second born son is an early riser. 6 a.m. he's frying egg. I'm like, dude, what are you doing frying eggs at 6 a.m.? It's holidays, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But at 6 he's up. Exactly 8 p.m. he's in bed. Why? Habit. And that's how he's wired. And so for the person who gets active sexually at a young age, what happens is you do not have the necessary control again to stop this behavior. So when there are no girls around, you just find the closest possible option. And if you look at Romans chapter 1 from verse 18 to the end, it talks about, it gives a progression of how man, first of all, turns away from God. It says, "Do not see God, equality with God as I do not see pursuit of God as something to be followed." And their hearts were darkened because they turned away from God and made images. Idolatry began there, made in the images of men, and began to worship these things rather than God who made them. And so God gave them over to the burning of sexual burning for each other. And because they did not still turn back to God, now He gave them over to an inhumane sexual behavior, where now men turn to men, women turn to women. This is all in Romans chapter 1 from verse 18 to 33, where it talks about this. And eventually at the end of this verse, it says they did not just do evil, but they sought new ways of doing evil and gave approval to them who did such things.
Right.
What has happened? You've moved from a place of innocence, where you're pursuing God and said, God does not know. I don't have to follow God's rules. Wacha tujibonde. We are still young. Tujibonde. It's a song that used to say, vunja mifupa kama bado meno iko. Break bones. You can only eat bones when you have teeth. And so we feel at that prime age, let me jibonda so that when I get to 50, 60, and even if a girl winks at you, you don't know whether you're going blind or so anything. You just like, what's going on? I'll have enjoyed life. All right? And so we have the fun, but what happens is the fun gives birth to other messes. And if you look at some of the progression of some of these guys, you find that innocent 14-year-old gets into one sexual experience. The next thing, now they are 2-3 girlfriends here, there. The next thing, now they have groupies. The next thing, they have now gay experiences. The next thing, now they don't even have a value system. And then imagine this kid now. And I tell people, this is a challenge. Eventually, you have to settle down. Sisi nikaa vumbi. Eventually, we have to settle down.
Right.
What does it look like for a guy who has been messing up all over with anyone and everyone to settle down and raise a family. And so you find families where, you know, even daughters cannot come with their girlfriends home because the father will hit on them because he has never learned self-control. Because at 13, when you should have been learning self-control, you are jibondaing yani with everything and anything.
Right.
And then we think, oh, maybe he's good just being away from girls. And then you discover, even with Jamaz. Why? Because we've gone down a trail. And this is what we are seeing. And if you look at the mental health issues of young people today, many of them are coming from what? Homes where the parents have no control. Then your dad and you are operating in the same wavelength. You're talking from this side, kulai others, he is talking from this other side. You're just like, Dad, that's my girlfriend. Because the guy has no control. You've never learned self-control.
Right.
All right? And because God is no longer a consequence, you've to put your hands on God. So who gives you standards? And the law is telling you it's okay. And so here we are, sitting in a hot mess. Because we don't want to have a standard. We don't want a rule book to say, this is what we do. Kenyan laws are very clear. Whether you come from America, whether you come from the greatest superpower in this world,
right.
When you get to the Kenyan road, you keep left.
Right.
You don't say, but I'm American. We drive on the right. Utakufa. All right? Because the rules here are such. And that's what Christian rules are like.
Yeah.
If you don't want to follow Christ, then leave. You know, if you don't want to be a student at a university, all you need to do is not do the homework. For one sem, you'll fail the exam. You're given a receipt, you fail again. The third one, you're told, listen, your brain capacity, your CC is not for this school. Whether they love you or not, even if you're the best player in the university, like rugby team or basketball team, they'll just let you go. Why? Because you've not met the standards. And they are not a sports team, they are an academic institution.
Right.
So what makes you think that for Christians, we have to accept guys who are not even making effort? At least if you're doing E for effort, it's okay. But if you're just saying, me, this is how I am, just take me as I am, you know? And you're bondying everyone in the process. It can't work.
Yeah, and I think from what I'm seeing, this is a society that has chosen to, we're like picking and choosing what applies and what works. So we have chosen this this way of life, and we have turned it into something that can be acceptable into God's eyes, or like people are continuously trying to fight for it into being an acceptable thing. And I think for me, what really worries me is with this still progressing, and a lot of people not having such conversations. Like what does the future look like for children coming from Christian families, and like navigating in a world full of very heavy opinions and views and different perspectives and things. Because I also think that cancel culture is a big thing in our society as well. Just having this conversation, it's very easy for a group of people somewhere to sit down and decide, no way, like these people, they generally just need to be cancelled from society, and they don't agree with us because of the beliefs and the views that we have. And I think as a teenager, and just like this whole longing for like people as young as us trying to like be accepted into society, and like this still being a very big thing. Like how would you advise like somebody that young navigating such a space, especially as a Christian?
Number one, rule or no rule, look at consequence. Look at the things that are happening in the free world, the party world. I live in an area called Roysambu. If you're in the party world, you know Roysambu. You know Mirema Drive, you know? Now, you know? It's at some point there was a joke that Roysambu is the dormitory for all the Sponios girlfriends, eh? And it's true. You come to Roysambu, it's like a fairly, it's an imta. But you look at the parking lot outside there, you're like, guy, you're driving a V8. Why are you living in a 2-bedroom apartment in this dusty street? Kumbe ni wasa wamekuja visiting day? It's visiting day. It's a reality. You drive in Roysambu with a nice car, you'll just see girls crossing the road in front of you. I remember seeing that and I was like, it's not true, but it's the reality. What is Resambu also known for? A good number of the suicides that have happened, the suicides and the murders, the being thrown off the roofs. Mpaka this joke that has been going around, landlords mweke grill tafadhali kwa nyumba zenyu, are happening in the same party capital. Why? Why is there so much freedom and so much pain? So I said, look at consequence. Fine, it's okay. You can party as much as you want. And I'm writing a piece, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, why is it that this freedom is not coming with joy? Why is it that, there's this whole conversation that Will Smith's family were having at the Red Table Talk called polyamory. Polyamory is where you have your girlfriend, but you also have this other kachik you just finya for the fun of it. You're not dating. You're just
polyamorous.
Yeah, this is just physical, but this is my girlfriend. And let me tell you, and you listen to those guys talk on that Red Table Talk, you're like, this is deep. This is so modern. This is how we should think as humans. This is development. And then you realize Will Smith is right now in rehab. And they're like, hey, this thing bites. Consequence. When his wife told him she had an entanglement with August, the look on his face became a meme globally. Why? It's a free world. This is the capital of the free world. This is Hollywood. Why is it that this freedom is not allowed when it's my wife? Why is it that it hits me this hard? Because the human soul understands faithfulness. It doesn't matter whether you sugarcoat it in which, how, what way. Faithfulness in a relationship is a core for a human soul.
Right.
All right? I've just talked about Resambu. Those murders that are happening. Many of them, if you look around them, it's vicious circles. The last one that I had was this lady who left the husband, and the husband was coming to tetea haki yake. Then he found the other boyfriend there, and they jointly tupad him from, I think, 4th floor.
What?
All right? Why? Because we understand faithfulness. And this guy is like, no, you can't have another guy when I'm here. Otherwise, you just be coming and like, oh, the other boyfriend is here. Okay, sorry. Sangapi atakuwa free? See, just agree. What time will you be free? Then I jipanga, I go, then I show up on schedule,
Right.
But it's not working. Because freedom without boundaries is the greatest kind of bondage.
Right.
And a lot of people in the name of freedom have put themselves in such great bondage. And look at even nature. You can argue about whether trees are important. You can fight against the reforestation, but you continue cutting trees. The desert will catch up. It does not argue. It doesn't say, but you see, no. It just follows suit as to what you do. What is happening with this generation is that we are raising a very pained generation. We're raising a very broken generation. One of the things that makes a person feel safe is when there are clear rules, clear checks and balances. When there is order, we are more settled as human beings. That is why you go to countries that are called developed countries. The traffic rules are followed. You go to an office and say you want a passport, you get your passport within the stipulated time.
Right.
You have an issue with the police on the road, the police stop you, they ask you exactly what they need to ask you. And once they have told you this is your infraction, they give you a ticket and they let you go. Come to Africa. Everything is free for all. The matatu is doing a U-turn, in the middle of where there is a guy dangling from it. There is all this anarchy and it looks fun.
Right.
But that anarchy is a huge stress point. And so because the more predictable a world is, the more peaceful a human mind is. That is why before God created man, Adam and Eve, he first of all made order of the world.
Right.
Because angetuingiza kwa hiyo mchanganyiko. Adam and Eve would just be showing, they're like, okay, water, up here, down here, everywhere. Okay, darkness, nini. They would be so confused. And God ordered everything. And then now he made Adam and Eve because we respond to order. whether we like it or not, if there is no order as to where sex happens and where it does not, what constitutes sex and what does not constitute sex, what constitutes relationship and what does not constitute relationship, we will constantly be in a struggle. Let me finish with this story. A friend of mine bought a Range Rover. He's in Uganda. You know the Ugandans are boisterous. They're very, very loud. So he was like, now I have a Range Rover. So he bought this thing secondhand from somebody and he took it around for a while, but it wasn't Range Rovering. You're accelerating. It's not going as the way in your mind you pictured a Range Rover. So one time he decides, this is a Range Rover. I'm not going to take it to my Odori mechanic. I'm taking it to the official Range Rover company in Uganda. So he goes and takes the thing. And, of course, being a top-end service center, he was given another vehicle and told, you can go with this. When it's ready, we'll call you. And you can come bring back our car, he will give you your car. After a few hours, the mechanic calls him and says, sir, you need to come. He asks, is the car ready? He says, no, you just come. I need to explain to you something. So the guy drives back to the Range Rover Center, sits down with the guy and comes in and the guy tells him, come, I just need to show you something. And there was a heap of things, brake pads, my pumps, my linings and all sorts of things heaped on one side. And then the Range Rover is on this other side. And the guy asked him, so what's going on? He says, this on this side is Range Rover. All these other things that were inside this car are not Range Rover. You know why? Because there were so many things. The way we adapt. Your spring ain't, but just let's find a spring that can fit. It's not for Range Rover. This is for Toyota Hilux. It's the same range. So this guy, there were so many things that were not a Range Rover that were in the Range Rover. So this guy cleaned up for him his Range Rover and put them aside. And then he told him, now, do you want us to make your Range Rover a Range Rover? And this is the price. And the guy saw the price, he was buying another car. But that's the same thing with us and relationships. There are so many things that are not relationships. There are so many things that are not Christian. There are so many things that are not right that we have put into our lives because we are trying to adapt. I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to, that thing you're saying. Right. There's been such a push that everyone is like, if you don't align to this movement, then you'll be cancelled. You'll be thrown off the radar. But the reality is, there are so many things that are in that Range Rover that we call our lives that are not actually life.
Right.
Now, can they move us from one point to another? Yes. Can. That thing was still moving. Is there a bit of discomfort? Yes. Ultimately, that thing would have stalled or probably killed him because one day he's going to chop out the corner and the steering rack is for a vit. And the thing just occurs and he just finds himself spinning up, and he's going straight into a ditch. It would have killed him. Yeah. And unfortunately, this liberty, this freedom without boundaries is killing our young people. The tension of not knowing what is right and what is not is killing us more than the tension of trying to live up to what is right.
Right.
So we have a choice. To live right or not to.
Live by the law or don't.
Yeah. But either way, it's fun. One is short term, the other one is long term.
Right. Wow, I don't even have anything else to add from that.